Hey, I want to thank Courage to Lead for sponsoring this month's podcast. Courage to Lead is led by a friend of mine and my personal coach, a guy by the name of Sean Lovejoy. He has been a real estate developer, a church planner, mega church pastor, and now the CEO of a fast-growing coaching and consulting organization. Sean's been a guest on the podcast, and I've gotten to know he and several of his coaches that help pastors and business leaders all across the country. And recently, I was invited to join their team to be one of their coaches. Listen, I've just learned this over time. You can only get so far on your own know-how and own intellect, wisdom, experience, and smarts. You need someone that can coach you and help you see the things that you cannot see. And Sean has done that for me, and their coaches have done that for countless leaders and pastors, and now I'd like to do that for you as well. So if you'd like to inquire about either me being your coach or receiving a coach, contact me at pastorrustygeorge.com, and you can click the link there to find out more information. If you'd like to just go to Courage to Lead to find out more about what they do, you can go to couragetolead.com, a great world-class coaching organization helping you build a killer team and grow your organization. I'm so excited to be a part of their organization, and I would love to meet you there. Thank you to Courage to Lead for all that you do for leaders and all that you've done for me. Following Jesus isn't always easy, but it's not complicated. Join us each week as we work to make faith simple. This is Simple Faith. Hey, welcome to Simple Faith. My name is Rusty George. Boy, every now and then you get a guest on here I'm just really kind of geeking out on because I got so many questions for this guy. This guy was a guy that grew up in Kansas. He's just a little bit older than I am. He grew up in another part of the state than I did, and he grew up a Kansas City Royals fan. He played baseball for a while, got into the business side of baseball and the managing side of baseball, and moved into an assistant general manager role with the Atlanta Braves. They won a World Series there. Then he moved over to the Kansas City Royals to take on his favorite childhood team and mine, the Kansas City Royals, and bring them back to glory. And then after that, he moved on to the Texas Rangers, where they won a World Series just a few months ago. Well, Dayton Moore is my guest today, and I want to just give a quick shout out to Randy Frazee for making the introduction. Grateful for Randy and his friendship and his times on the podcast. And he made this conversation happen with the general manager of the Kansas City Royals when they won the World Series in 2015. Now, you might be thinking, well, listen, I don't really listen to podcasts to hear about baseball. I want to know about how this impacts my faith. Well, what do you do when you work in an environment that isn't necessarily a faith environment? It's filled with people chasing money and success and fame. How do you create a culture of character? That's exactly what he did. And it ended up being the best thing that could ever happen to my beloved Kansas City Royals. I think you're going to love this conversation, even if you don't love baseball. So here it is, my conversation with Dayton Moore. Dayton, thank you so much for joining the program. Hey, for our listeners that may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us the Wikipedia version of Dayton Moore in 90 seconds.
Don't go on Wikipedia. I don't know what they're printing these days, but no,
it's all good.
It's great to be with you, and appreciate the opportunity just to really, kind of share our journey, our leadership journey, and some of the mistakes that we've made, some of the things that we've learned, and some of the things that we're looking to do in the future. But my team's at home. That's my family. Mary Ann is my wife. We've been married 31 years. She's just been unbelievable. Such a great encourager to me, unbelievable support system, and being a wife whose husband's working in baseball, and it's 24/7, just to watch how she's managed, her personal life and as a mother, and just with such grace and class, has been an unbelievable inspiration to me. Our three children, Ashley, Avery, and Robert. I can't say how proud we are of them. All three of them, express their faith. They're proud of their faith. They love Jesus. Ashley's working as a full-time missionary in the country of Panama. She also has a nursing degree, and she's out doing medical missions, from Panama into Guatemala and the Dominican Republic. And Avery, our middle, she got her degree from K-State in family life and behavioral sciences, and took a job working at an assisted living place as a lifestyle coordinator here in Kansas City. Right out of college, did that for a year and decided to take a little bit of a break. And she went into retail, and she's loving that. And she's working at a local company called Made in KC, which they sell Kansas City, made products, obviously, and she's enjoying that. And our son's 21, and he's a minor league player with the Philadelphia Phillies. And went to University of Arkansas, graduated actually from high school a year early, and attended Arkansas and was there for 2.5 years, and was drafted actually by the Brewers in the second round, and was recently traded to the Phillies. So that's our team.
Wow,
that's our family.
Well, I know that we're close in age enough that we remember the 1985 World Series vividly. Does it still pain you to talk about the Phillies after that loss, or not 85, 1980?
80, yeah.
Yeah. I met Pete Rose one time, and I said I was still bitter.
Yeah, I know. You in baseball, you learn to move on.
Yeah.
And I've certainly had my share of failures, and thankfully those wounds turn into scars, and you get a little stronger through the years. But just being able to grow up in baseball and do something that I've loved to do since I was a little boy, and to be able to provide for your family, doing something that you truly love and enjoy, has just been an amazing blessing. And so I try not to complain too much about the losses and the frustrations and the challenging times of baseball, because you've got to make a decision that if you're going to work in baseball, you're going to have to deal with a lot of the ups and downs. And so we've certainly, tried to do that.
I remember in 1980, that World Series, I learned a lot about God during that time, because I prayed a lot for the Royals to win that World Series, and God didn't answer that prayer. So I discovered God might have higher priorities than just my baseball affiliations.
I often think that as well. I'm glad he does. But
yeah, exactly.
I hear you.
Well, tell us a little bit about your faith journey. When did Jesus become more than a story to you?
Well, I would say that probably when my father was battling cancer, and then ultimately passed away from cancer, and in 1991. But this was my hero. Somebody had never been sick a day in his life. Somebody had overcome so much, in his youth, and persevered his whole life. An extremely hard worker, a kind man, a strong man. And then all of a sudden we got word one day that, he had colon cancer, and he was 48 years old. And certainly it was rare, at that stage of his life. And, but watching him, battle that with grace and humility, and, his faith, really, came out at that point in time. And, I just really realized for the first time how fragile life is, and how it truly is a vapor. And, we've got to make sure that, we give our best effort every single day. We don't want to look back with any regrets. And, but just watching him, manage through that. And then ultimately, he passed away, May 14th, 1991. I was with him. I was holding him when he passed away. And, that was a pretty powerful moment. That's really, I think, the first time I could really feel the Holy Spirit, in my life. And, from there, it's, there's been a lot of different times, throughout my journey that, I don't know where I would be without the presence of the Holy Spirit.
It's interesting. I have read your book, and I've heard your story, and I've talked to a lot of people that have strong faith that are in major league sports of some sort, and here you are in Major League Baseball. Obviously, there are people in the game that have a strong faith, and some that have a faith for namesake only, but you're not in ministry, so to speak, as far as it's not your number one priority when you go to work, and so not everybody's fully aligned. How do you, because a lot of our listeners, work in some kind of occupation where, listen, it's not really about faith, but they are faithful people in their job. How do you maintain a faith where faith isn't the priority, and how do you walk that line of sharing your faith without, beating people over the head with it? What have you discovered in all your years in the baseball world?
Well, that's a great question, and I've made a lot of mistakes in that journey. Um, it's oftentimes you know what to say,
Hmm.
um, but maybe you say it at the wrong times, or you say it at the right time, and maybe it just doesn't come out right because it's, as we all know, it's very difficult to articulate feelings and emotions. Sometimes it just doesn't come out right, or the timing's not perfect, and so I've made a lot of mistakes in that journey. But I will say this: that when I started leading departments with the Atlanta Braves when I was 28 years old, and I've always studied leadership, and I love competitors, and I've studied coaches and highly successful people, and there I've came to one conclusion: that the greatest leader in the history of the world is Jesus,
Hmm.
and the greatest competitor in the history of the world is Jesus. And so we've always tried to model our leadership after Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you believe he is your savior, whether you believe he was a prophet, whether you believe that he was this leadership figure in time, rabbi, or whatever you believe he was, there's no debating that he was a historical figure and he was a leader. And so I've always just kind of tried to model the leadership lessons of Jesus, and the Gospels it is the greatest example. It reminds us to settle disputes quickly and to be a peacemaker. Well, great leaders have those attributes. It reminds us to be responsive to people and to care and have simple kindness and concern for what they're experiencing in life. The Gospels remind us to go above and beyond and give people more than they expect.
Mm.
Reminds us to be humble and share the glory and give credit away when success is attributed to your team, your family, your company, your organization. And it also reminds us the importance to stand up for people. Don't kick people when they're down. Be an encourager to them. And so the Gospels, I believe, are the examples of the greatest leadership lessons and principles in the history of mankind. And of course, Jesus is the greatest competitor. There's nobody who competed better than anybody else than Jesus on this earth. And he came here to compete for your life, my life, our future generations, our children. He sacrificed everything he had for us. And there's no greater example of how to compete and to compete than what he did for us. He competed for us, and so I've always just tried to model my behavior, after that. And I've had great mentors, Rusty, through the years. I've had great mentors that have encouraged me to stay true to my faith.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Cash, one of my mentors, spiritual mentors, always said you'd rather be persecuted for who you are than praised for who you're not.
Wow, that's good.
Other people have said, just be real, be who you are. And so we've always just kind of led in a very transparent way. And also remember, I mean, when I started my leadership journey, there wasn't social media. In fact, when I became a general manager in 2006, I mean, I never knew what Twitter was. And I think it was just a few years later, maybe 2010, 2011, Twitter and social media and Facebook and all of this became apparent to me. And so, we've had to lead in a very transparent society where everybody knows exactly what you're doing. And I've always shared with players and coaches and instructors and our own children and people that I care about, you might as well be transparent in life because you're going to get exposed anyway. And so, that's just kind of how we've kind of done our life. I mean, this is who I am. These are the things that are important to me. Now, again, I've chosen to have a relationship with Jesus, primarily because I've studied him and I know what he is about, what he was about when he was on this earth, and the type of competitor that he was and is. And so I studied that. I tried to model myself out of the best of the best, and through that, my relationship with him has just become deeper and deeper.
That is such great stuff. We could stop right there And that would be enough for us to chew on. But while I've got the time, I want to dig into your time with the Royals. So we've already talked about this offline. I mean, you and I both grew up in Kansas. We both grew up as Royals fans. And now you get a chance to take over the Royals in 2006. They were in the basement as far as an organization goes. And for those of us that lived through those days, we remember them not fondly, but vividly. And here you come into this organization. Everybody told you not to go because you're a part of a winning organization in Atlanta. And now suddenly you're going to the Royals. Part of that probably because it's a great opportunity and because there's some nostalgia there. You loved this team. So when you get to a place like that, there's immediate expectations for things to turn around on a dime, but they can't. So how do you balance quick wins with preaching patience? Because you know it's going to take time. I think you even said to them, this is a 10-year rebuilding project. So how do you give the people some quick wins while also maintaining a level of patient expectations?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't know if we did it perfectly, but I tell you what we tried to do. Well, first of all, I always wanted to be a leader, and I think the greatest, and not just an authority figure. I wanted to be a leader, and I felt like that the greatest trait that a leader has is love and the ability to try to love people, to care about people. I think it was Dr. King that said, "Power without love is reckless and abusive." And so when I stepped into that chair in the highest level of leadership in an organization, I wanted to make sure the very first thing that we did was to spend a lot of one-on-one time with people, get to know people, articulate to them that, hey, look, my team is at home. I want your team to be at home as well. In fact, I want you to be the greatest husband and father that you can, and then give the Royals everything else. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that we set those priorities, and they heard it from me. And so, because I knew that it was going to be maybe the toughest challenge in all of sports, with the way the economics of the game had changed and was continuing to change, and the Royals were obviously a small market. They didn't have a lot of players in their system. Most people in the industry didn't think that we could win. And in fact, after being here, Rusty, and evaluating every aspect of the organization over the last 2 to 3 months when we came here in 2006, I was somewhat convinced that there's no way we could win in Kansas City. So what do? We wanted just to make this one of the best environments in the history of sports where people wanted to work. And I knew to do that, as the leader, as somebody that was responsible for all aspects of the organization, that I needed to make sure that I spent a lot of one-on-one time with our people, setting the vision, articulating the vision. And of course, there are times when you have to stand up in front of the group and try to inspire and share that vision to the masses. But and I know, really the only way to build a consensus and to get people on board is spend time with them in small groups and one-on-one, and get a chance to ask questions and connect with each other's hearts. And so we all have an understanding of what we're about. And so that's really, how we did it. And that's what we wanted to do, is just develop a great relationship. Relationships are so much more important than outcomes. And in professional sports, and even, college athletics now, we want it to be all about winning, and it's the bottom line. And I understand that that's a part of it, but I think to win, and to win at the highest level, it has to be relationship based. And so that's how we went about trying to change the culture, is just spend as much time as we can one-on-one with our people. And so many times today, you hear stories about when a new general manager or president comes on board, and it may be 2 to 3 months before some of their employees have had any connection with the leader of the organization. I find that sad. I really do, because that's not how it should be.
You had a great line in your book, and let me just mention the book. It's called More Than a Season, by Dayton Moore, Building a Championship Culture. And this was, I bought this just so I could read kind of the journey you took the Royals through. But there are so many leadership nuggets in here. I found myself highlighting a lot of it. You had a line in there where you talked about, in the early days, you wanted to hire people you'd want to have at your dinner table with your family. Talk about that a little bit, because we don't always think about that when it comes to the world of professional sports.
Well, it's we when we came here, we wanted to create an organization we want our own families and sons and daughters to be a part of, and we felt that that was really really important. And there was three things that I think are crucial in hiring individuals. And one I felt like that the people that we hired need to be able to apply moral principles in their life.
Mm-hmm.
They need to know right from wrong, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's nobody that I've ever worked with or dealt with on a consistent basis where their personal life doesn't leak into their professional life, or their professional life doesn't leak into their personal life, and it's intertwined. And so I felt that that was really really important, because the leaders have to be able to model the behavior that you want seen in with your team. And so that was really crucial. The second thing that we felt was really important is we want people are going to embrace diversity,
Mm-hmm.
diverse thought, diverse backgrounds, diverse cultures. Really, really important. And then the third thing is we wanted people to compete for one another, to be able to have the ability to put others first. And again, simple principles that Jesus talks about in the Gospels. And we want to be able to compete for each other, have the ability and the desire to put the needs and wants of others first, and your own needs and wants second. And I think John Wooden may have said it this way. He said, "Don't be so consumed with it being your way or having your own way, but the way of just the best way," I think is
Mm-hmm.
what he said. Don't be consumed with having it one way or your own way, but just be consumed with it being the best way. And so getting a group of people together that truly could compete for one another was really, really important.
Mm. You have so many great lines in this book about the type of people you were looking for. A couple I wanted to just get your comments on. One was, and I've used this line multiple times since reading this book, looking for people with a critical eye versus a critical spirit. Boy, that is a big distinction there. How are you able to discern who is one versus the other?
Well, that's another great question. I've always felt that the most successful people um, are they expect a lot. They expect a lot out of themselves. They expect a lot out of their teammates, their colleagues, but they're also the individuals that are the first to forgive, to give grace, to give multiple chances.
Hmm.
And so I think that's where we talked about the critical eye versus the critical spirit, and that works in leadership when people are judging you each and every day, right? So every single day, you and I are being judged by somebody. And thank God that we have those people in our lives that are looking at us with a critical eye. They're uncovering blind spots for us. They're shaping us. They're molding us. They're speaking truth into our lives. But we also know that there's people that will look at us with a critical spirit, and those are the individuals that we simply cannot please. It doesn't matter what side of the argument we're on. If we say the sky's blue, they say it's gray. If we say it's gray, they say it's blue. I mean, we all have those types of people in our lives, and our faith allows us, to give that away. Those that are judging us unfairly or looking at us with a critical, spirit. But also as a leader, again, you want to expect a lot. Expectations, as we all know, drive results. But understand that a lot of days you and I and the people we work with aren't going to, meet expectations, and they're going to make mistakes. Give that away in advance and know that you're going to be the first one to come alongside of them and give them that grace and be able to, forgive them and move on
Mm-hmm.
each day.
Another great line you had was, I think this was a concept you and former manager Trey Hillman came up with, was energy givers versus energy suckers. How do you see that in people?
Well, I mean, there's some people that they walk in the room and they give off an aura of like, hey, you guys are here for me. You guys exist for my benefit. And then there are other people that walk in the room and they give off this aura that's like, hey, I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to bring value to each and every one of you. I'm here to serve you. And again, I'm a big John Wooden studier, and I think John Wooden's father, made it very clear to him as a young boy, you're never going to whine, you're never going to complain, and you're not going to make excuses. And we've always tried to live by that and surround ourselves, with people that are going to look for the positivity in things. They understand that, when we do make mistakes and the challenges that we face and the setbacks that we have, it's all for our learning. It's molding us and shaping us into the team and the leaders that we want to be. And again, but it takes encouragement. There's a lot of days where my attitude is a reflection of maybe what I'm experiencing. If I'm,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just human nature. And so we've got to surround ourselves, with individuals who are going to pick us up, believe in us, encourage us. Encouraging words is what motivates us at the end of the day. People standing up for us when we have bad days and not kicking us when we're down. That's what motivates us. And so you want to surround yourself with people that have those attributes and those qualities. I mean, you mentioned Ned Yost earlier off the air. We were talking about Ned. I mean, Ned's one of the most positive and optimistic people I've ever been around, and that's the reason, in my opinion, that he was always so successful, because he was always positive and looking out for the very best in everybody, but also making the best of every situation.
Hey, let me interrupt this podcast to just remind you about CourageToLead.com, a great organization that is helping leaders build killer teams. And I'm happy to announce that I am now part of their organization, helping pastors and business leaders. If you'd like to learn more about me being your coach or finding a different coach, just check it out at my website, PastorRustyGeorge.com, for more information. All right, back to the show. So you put these values into place, you determine the kind of culture you want to have, and then the long game begins. And you're just kind of letting it grow. You're making some trades. You're calling up some people from the minor leagues. You're getting the right managers in place. But boy, it was a lot of years, several, I should say, before you started to see the results of that. Now, you've got all this pressure from externally coming in. When are we going to win? When are we going to win? How did you battle that? How did you go through those difficult times and maintain, stay the course, trust the process, stay on target? Were there just certain people around you that you were dialed in with the owner and the manager and that, or was it just kind of this internal resolve? How did you keep your eye on the prize, so to speak?
Well, both. I mean, everything that you just mentioned, but the number one aspect of that, truthfully, was the support I had from, Mr. David Glass, who, as you know, one of the most successful businessmen in our history of our country. He'd built Walmart, into this great company, and somebody that was highly respected. And, Mr. Glass, I felt without a doubt, had our back. I mean, we had his unconditional support, and not that he didn't challenge us, but at the end of the day, we knew he was supporting everything that we did, and so we didn't have to concern ourselves necessarily with maybe what the media was saying, or those individuals that were looking at us and evaluating us with that critical spirit that we talked about, because Mr. Glass and his family was very supportive. And but we also knew, Rusty, that we were going to be good. I mean, we the talent that we had in the organization was at a very high level. I think in 2010 we were voted, the organization with the best minor league system, and by a long shot. In fact, some people said it perhaps was the best minor league system in the history of baseball. And so we had a lot of really, high quality players. You can't predict a world championship, but I knew we were going to start winning games. And so at the end of the day, I felt that, we would be validated. Our fans would certainly appreciate the hard work, and they would enjoy the players, because we were raising these players to connect with the fans. They played with great energy, and they showed personality on the field. They were high quality people, and let's face it, when you're good people make good players, and we'd raise these kids through our system with values, and we valued them. And and I know, and I learned this as a young coach, and I read this somewhere, and it said the more you value your players and your people, the better values they'll have. And so, again, you go back to hiring coaches and scouts and instructors that you want your own family to be around. Well, the people that we had in the organization had values, and they valued people, and so our players were character driven, and our fans understood who they were, and they got to see those values. And so we knew that they would in turn motivate and inspire our fans to follow the team.
It seemed to me that you talk about in the book flipping the switch, and you call up all these players. There was a distinct difference when Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, Salvador Perez take the field because of their energy and their chemistry with each other. You just looked at them and thought, they really like each other. They love the game, and it's almost infectious. Did you see that in the locker room and the dugout, that they just changed the temperature of everything?
Well, they did, and we set vision, with them constantly. Even before we drafted Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas, we talked about the importance of winning together in Kansas City. They understood that we were going to stay with them through the ups and downs of their major league and their minor league career and their major league career. Now, we didn't sugarcoat anything. We told them it was going to be tough. We told them it was going to be perhaps the greatest challenge of their professional life. But they also understood that we were going to stay with them, and we were going to support them unconditionally. The same support we had from the Glass family, we were going to commit to them. And we talked about the importance of doing something special in Kansas City. The Royals had not won a World Series since 1985. We believed that they were going to be the group to bring a world championship back to Kansas City. I mean, we talked about it with him and how special it was going to be. And so we continued to preach that message and to cast that vision, and we would do it constantly. And so and we talked about the importance of togetherness and unity and oneness of purpose amongst teams, and that was, we were just focused on that mission and growing them as leaders. They won together in the minor leagues. Doesn't mean you're going to win at the major league level, but it certainly can be a strong predictor, and it was.
So you get to the playoffs in 2014. I remember the moment that we clinched the playoffs, and I thought, this is just the greatest thing ever. And then the wild card game, where it looked like you're going to lose, and then they came back and won, which was unbelievable. And then we just go on this hot streak all the way to the World Series, and then lose to the Giants eventually. I thought, first of all, it was such a classy move of the Royals to celebrate the Giants in those moments, to turn on the lights as orange for them, to reward them. But then to start chanting "Let's go Royals" after it was all over with, as a way to say, hey, we're back and we're coming back next year. But personally, how long did it take you to bounce back from that loss in the World Series?
Well, we were hurting, because we felt we were better than the Giants. The Angels, who we played after beating the A's. I mean, the Angels were really good. I think they won 97 games that year, and we just played better than them at that series. I mean, probably player for player. I mean, they had more accomplished, more veteran talent. And then we went on to play the Orioles, and the Orioles again had a very good team as well. They had some guys that were injured and they weren't completely healthy, but we went on to beat them, and I wasn't sure we were really better. We knew it was going to be a tough matchup, but when we got to the Giants, we felt we were better than the Giants. We really did, and so that really hurt, losing to them. And in fact, Bruce Bochy, who is obviously the manager of the Rangers, who I work with now, as you know, Boch and I talk about this. So we talk about if Panic made that diving play up the middle on the ball Eric Hosmer hit with Lorenzo Cain on second, and executed a double play, a 4-6-3 double play, and we both talked about, if they wouldn't have made that play, I think we would have went on and won that game. And a fine line, winning and losing. But to answer your question, I mean, we were hurting, but our fans, our community really motivated us to go to work right away. And we did. I mean, we had a little celebration, a little kind of pep rally, if you will, a fan appreciation day at the K after we lost, and then we went up to the baseball operations room, and we started discussing, how we were going to put together a championship caliber roster for 2015. We knew our players would come back hungry and more dedicated than ever. And we wanted to make sure we were prepared as a front office to make sure that we supplemented our current roster the very best we could to give our players and our fans, that opportunity to win a world championship in 2015.
So obviously that's exactly what happened in 2015. It was magical from my perspective. But for you, I mean, this was the apex. You hit the top of the mountain. Was there a sense of, this is incredibly satisfying, or a sense of, well, here we go again the next year? How did you feel in that moment?
Well, it's hard to describe. You think that it's going to be, this euphoric, more than magical feeling, and it was special. But I felt just extreme gratitude, very thankful that we were able to do something special together. You reflect back on all the hard work and the dedication. You're appreciative of the great support of certainly ownership, Mr. Glass, Dan Glass, their family, all the people that helped you, get where you are. There's also a great sense of relief. Keep in mind, I started with the Atlanta Braves, and we were in the playoffs every year, and a lot of times we had the very best team, but it's hard to win. A lot has to go your way, and the Braves, during that magical run of 14 straight division titles, had one World Series championship, and so I knew it was very difficult, to ultimately win a World Series.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this great feeling of satisfaction and appreciation. But the thing that I'm most thankful of is there our core group of baseball operations employees. They were able to celebrate with their families. Their families stayed together during that time. And when you have young families and you're in a high pressure position in sports, I mean, there's a lot of tension, a lot of pressure. And then when you have a young family, we know the challenges of that young family as well. And it intensifies even further. And as I said before, personal lives leak into professional lives leak into personal lives. And the fact that I just remember this moment when our families were celebrating and thinking, you know what, wow, they're getting a chance to enjoy this opportunity together, and their marriages have stayed intact. Their children are thriving and doing well, and hopefully it's a moment that they'll remember forever, and help springboard them on to even greater things in life, and realize that when everybody puts their own desires aside and commits to doing one thing and supporting one another, we can ultimately do special things. And that's what I remember the most. And I'm thankful that I had that moment during those celebrations where I could feel that.
Yeah, it must be tremendous euphoria, relief, excitement, and yet at the same time, there's got to be this realization. And I think Ned and I talked about this after the Atlanta Braves World Series, of realizing, well, there really is more to life. And that was kind of a turning point in his faith after they had won the World Series, and he was still searching. And I think that for every person that's in sports that has a relationship with Jesus, they recognize that there's something bigger, which is probably what helped you through the next few years? Because Ned and I talked about how the Royals really should have won 3 in a row, but the Giants lost, obviously, and then the injuries, the loss of Ventura, the horrific things that happened, that following season, and then obviously, you have some key injuries and some players leave for different contracts. The winning begins to stop, and eventually, I think the team is sold, and they go a different direction from you. So I just want to ask you about that, because there's a lot of our listeners that have been part of great companies and organizations, and then they decide to go a different direction. What does that do to your faith? How did your faith carry you through that? How did you kind of manage that in your own mind? Did you see it coming? And just talk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I've spoken a lot about it. But I'd made an advanced decision prior to even taking the role as a general manager of the Kansas City Royals that when my time was finished, that I wanted to handle things with grace and integrity. Being a college coach and coming up through the system with the Braves, and being in positions where I had to release players and send players out my entire career, and certainly no different as a general manager with the Royals. I've seen a lot of people handle it with grace, and some people, not so well. And so I had made an advanced decision that whenever our time was through, I wanted to handle it in a classy way. And so I've been preparing, for that moment. Did I want to get let go by the Kansas City Royals? No. Did I ever envision a scenario where that would happen? I knew it would at some point, but it did catch me off guard because, we were, moving forward in some areas, and I think really rebuilding the team at a level that's going to compete at a high level here in the very near future. And I think everybody in baseball was recognizing that. But, there's a lot of things you just can't control. I've went through, times of being, angry, during this past year, and also, being very, very thankful for the blessings that God has given me and allowed me to lead in doing something that I really, really love to do and feel honored to do. And so it's just part of the game. And I feel like that, I'm right where I need to be in working with Chris Young and the Texas Rangers, one of our former players here, with Kansas City when I was a GM, and I think was the MVP of our pitching staff in 2015. And so the fact that, he asked me to join him is a tremendous blessing and a great honor. But yeah, I mean, I've went through a lot of, different feelings, being no longer with the Kansas City Royals, especially when, we had opportunity to leave the Royals after we won. And we didn't. We stayed. And we stayed primarily because we had the great support of the Glass family, and they were allowing us to build it and rebuild it the exact same way. And, the model in professional sports is once you win in a small market, you move on. Or even in college, Bill Self, for example. I mean, Bill Self wins at Tulsa, he goes to the University of Illinois. Wins the University of Illinois, he goes to Kansas. Andrew Friedman won in Tampa, and he went to L.A. And there's, Pat Gillick would move, from different markets, and once he had success, you go to another place. And so I knew that was going to be the professional model that you must follow if you want sustained success in the game. But for personal reasons, we decided to stay in Kansas City, and the Glass family was a big part of those personal reasons. And then, I can't predict, what was going to happen. Mr. Glass got sick. He had to sell the team, or decided to sell the team, and that's part of life, and I have to accept that. But one of the things, Rusty, that I've told every player and every coach and everybody I've encountered is, you may earn things in life, but you don't deserve anything in life. And if you wake up every day with gratitude and a thankful heart, knowing that you don't deserve anything and nobody owes you anything, and you make that advanced decision, and you're just grateful for, the opportunities that you have, to me, it was the right way to look at life. It's what works for me and my mindset. And that's what I've always shared with people. And so, again, when I was faced with, that setback, I had to model the things that, I've been saying, all those years to others. But it was a challenge to do so, and it still is at times. But again, I'm just very thankful that, we had a great opportunity in Kansas City. I believe we made the game of baseball better in our community, and hopefully we inspired a lot of people to be baseball fans and Royals fans. And the only thing we ever tried to do is share the love we have for baseball and the love we have for the Royals with everybody else that we came in contact in our community and throughout the country. And I think we did that, and I hope we did.
Absolutely. Well, as one fan, and I always hoped I'd have an opportunity to tell you this once I found out we had some mutual connections. Growing up, the one thing that my dad and I had in common was Royals baseball, and we would watch it. Obviously I grew up watching George Brett. We lamented one World Series. We celebrated in '85. And then there was obviously a dry spell. But for me to be able to experience that World Series again, sharing those kind of moments with my dad before he passed, it was very, very fulfilling. And I know that it's a game, obviously, but there's deeper things going on. It's Field of Dreams moments. It's playing catch with your dad. And your team brought all that back for me and for my father and for countless others. So on behalf of one fan, thank you. And thank you for doing it right. I was so proud of those players, and I was proud to, support them and cheer for them because they seemed like great individuals. And I love the entire organization. So I'm grateful for that. I hated that they went in a different direction. But tell us a little bit about, what you're doing now with the Texas Rangers, because you guys just had another World Series.
We did. And, you mentioned earlier, kind of Ned's revelation of fact that, winning the World Series is great, but it's not the most important thing. And he had those realizations and those moments and so forth. And after we won here with the Rangers, and just a special feeling, and first World Series championship in Royals history. Immediately, I began to think about, okay, I hope that I get an opportunity to be there with our coaches, our scouts, our instructors, and our players at some point in time, either next year or 2 to 3 years into the future, when they have that same realization that winning a World Series was great. It's the highest accomplishment in the game, team accomplishment in the game, and it's special. But when they realize it's not the most important thing, I want to be there to be able to share what is the most important thing in the world, and that's a relationship with Jesus. And so, I feel like, Rusty, in a lot of ways, I'm just getting prepared to lead. It's all preparing, I believe, me for what's next. And so, being with Chris Young and being with a lot of young baseball executives and players and scouts, and I get to share the mistakes that I've made and to bring hope and encouragement to them. I mean, I feel like that's where I'm supposed to be right now. So it's just been a lot of fun and great leadership opportunities, at this point in time.
So at this stage of your career, am I counting right? Do you have 3 World Series rings, one with Atlanta, one with Kansas City, and one with Texas?
We do, yeah. We've been blessed to be a part of 6 World Series and
wow.
3 World Series championships. And, I've been in a different role for all 3 of those World Series championships. So it's, I've had five different roles, I guess, with the 6. So, to be able to experience it at different levels has just been a great blessing.
Well, I want to ask you this. It's common in sports to talk about the Mount Rushmore of a team and figure out the top 4 players that had the biggest impact on their team. And I'm throwing you for a loop here. I didn't give you these questions ahead of time, or this one. But who would be on Mount Rushmore for the Kansas City Royals in your mind?
Of the players that were with us?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, there's so many.
I mean, obviously, as I think about the history of the Royals, number 1 is George Brett, but who are the other 3?
Yeah. Boy, I mean, it's hard for me to single guys out. If you're going to win, or if your team's going to reach its ceiling, everybody on that team has to be a leader, and everybody's going to be called upon to lead at some level during during the 162 games. I think of Gerard Dyson, who got 10 plus years of major league service, and the energy that he would bring every day, and his enthusiasm and his positivity, and he was such a great leader. And of course, Salvador Perez with his charisma and his personality on the field, and Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas and their competitive nature and their fearless attitude to play, and they would inspire so many people. You brought up Yordano Ventura, who lost his life in 2017. His fearless attitude and his just competitiveness, and so I mean, there's just so many different players, and I've been blessed to be a part of many of them, whether it be in Atlanta or Kansas City, and now with Texas, and I have such great respect for players because of the commitment that it takes to play this game. And I know what they experience and the sacrifice that they make. And so obviously Alex Gordon is a player that's very special to me personally.
Yeah.
I admire his commitment and what he did, his ups and downs and his commitment level. But to name a few, I just got such great respect for all of them, truthfully.
Yeah, that's a fine list, that's for sure. Well, Dayton, this has been a treat for me, and I know for our listeners, and I'm just so blessed by the way that you have led, and I'm grateful that you put it down in words in this book. This book is fantastic. Even for our listeners who are not baseball fans or Royals fans, this book is just chock full of leadership principles that are fantastic. And I just want to thank you for being on our show today, and wish you all the best, and just thank you as a grateful Royals fan for bringing them back. It was a great run.
Thanks, Rusty. I appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Well, Dayton, thank you so much for being a part of the show. What a gift. What an honor this was. Boy, a few years ago, I got to talk to Ned Yost, who was the manager. And this year, I get to talk to Dayton Moore, who was the general manager. I've pretty much covered all the bases, just waiting for a couple of the players to show up. That would be a lot of fun. Well, listen, next week, we're back with a conversation that was had a few years ago, but I'm bringing it back because how close we are to Easter. He was a cold case detective, and as an atheist, he thought, what if I used my skills to disprove the resurrection? Ended up becoming a Christian. He's been on Dateline, as well as countless other documentaries, a published author, and a world-renowned speaker. He's former detective J. Warner Wallace, and I'm going to replay my conversation with him just a few years ago. You're not going to want to miss it. As always, share this with a friend, hit subscribe, and we'll talk to you next week. And as always, keep it simple.